To talk about monster trucks is to talk about the troubled production history of this film, and my God, is it troubled. So troubled. For example, the president's son, who was about 4 years old, was the one who came up with the concept for the film. The movie ended up going over budget when it started shooting, and I think they started making it in about, 2014. Originally planned for a 2015, then 2016 release, until eventually being released in January of 2017. And the president got fired from Paramount as a result. And on top of that, the movie ended up grossing about the movie had a budget of about $250 million by the time it was done being made, and it did not make that back. It really did not. So, yeah, you'd think that with all the pretty much production hell that went on making this film, that it'd be a pretty bad movie because of that. I definitely can't say it's a great movie by any stretch of the imagination, or a good movie, but I certainly wouldn't say it's bad. Here's the plot. The high school student Trip, played by Lucas Till, is struggling to come to terms with the fact that his mother, played by Amy Ryan, who's barely in the movie, has gotten married to the sheriff, played by Barry Pepper, named Rick, he doesn't get along with, and is struggling to deal with his father, played by Frank Whaley, not being around. Trip is working at a junkyard in order to try to make money to get an engine for the truck he's trying to make for himself. However, a mysterious creature, who he ends up eventually C-type creature, who he ends up naming Creech, shows up at the junkyard and seems to feed on oil in order to be able to survive. Trip eventually starts to befriend the creature, whom he ends up naming Creech, and discovers that through the use of feeding him oil, the creature has the ability to act as an engine for his truck and power it as such. Trip's biology tutor Meredith, played by Jane Levy, who also has a crush on him, ends up getting sucked in too as an evil oil baron, played by Rob Lowe, and his personal mercenary, played by Holt McCallany, seek to try to take out the creatures and poison their land in order to be able to continue drilling the oil from there. But Trip and Meredith are helped out by a scientist working for Lowe, played by Thomas Lennon, who wants to do what's right. And also you got Danny Glover in there as a mechanic who's in a wheelchair. The guy who owns the junkyard. This movie has a lot going on, surprisingly enough. And it's not balancing everything out. But at the same time, it's keeping the focus where it needs to be, I suppose. The point is for the movie to focus on not only Creech powering the truck and literally having a monster in a truck, but then also having his parents be monsters in trucks too. And yeah, again, it's abundantly clear this movie's not intended for audiences who are gonna point at it and say, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard or seen. And yeah, the concept, you're gonna either think it's brilliant or you're gonna think it's beyond idiotic. A monster in a truck. Ha ha. But at the same time, this movie seems to have a little bit more in its head going on than just simply the fact that it's a movie about a monster in a truck. Yeah, the 4-year-old came up with the idea, but at the same time, he's not the one who wrote everything that came about in this movie. I think actual adults did work on the movie just based off of the concept, and what we get is a film that is, for lack of a better phrase, doing what it's supposed to do and trying to get its audience invested. Though at the same time, I did look at the deleted scenes for this movie, and you have Amy Ryan in another scene where, he's telling her, where Trip is telling her about how sorry he is that she that he blamed her for for his father leaving, and also introduces her to Jane Levy's character. And you get a scene where you get a deleted scene where Jane Levy is talking about is teaching in biology and says that we need to talk about reproduction. That was funny. That was very funny. I can kind of understand why those things weren't in the movie because they weren't really needed for the plot of the film. Although at the same time, you have the bully in the movie that movies like this usually does, and yet he really does nothing. He's barely in it. His girlfriend actually kind of gets more attention than he does, surprisingly enough. And yeah, even then, she doesn't get all that much attention either. I gotta say that what's probably the best thing about this movie is, well, I think the performances are good for what they are. I mean, Jane Levy, I enjoy her in pretty much anything I see her in. And I gotta say that the visual effects, the sequences with the truck careening through the streets, climbing on buildings, driving on buildings, jumping over buildings, I mean, and with the creature's tentacles coming out, they're very creatively done scenes. And yeah, it's hard not to kind of get sucked into it. I mean, it's very destructive too. I mean, God, all the people working for the mercenary or the oil baron who ends up dying during the climax of this movie. I mean, they don't outright say. I mean, there's a point where Thomas Lennon even says, "Hope he had a seatbelt on," and yeah, it's kind of shockingly amazing. And even then, I mean, they kind of leave the fate of the mercenary open-ended in Holt McCallany, and you kind of wonder, wait, is he? And yeah, also, well, I at first didn't think about it the first time I watched this movie. Yeah, Lucas Till and Jane Levy, they do not look like high school students. They can't pull it off anymore. They could probably pull off being college students, but not high school students. And the fact that you probably have actual high school students on the bus with Tripp in that one scene, he sticks out like a sore thumb. So, yeah, ultimately what this movie is it's for the audience that it's meant for. It's a harmless, crazy kids movie that, yeah, an adult, I suppose, would tolerate just fine, while a kid would really have a good time at it. I mean, I think this movie has exactly the hallmarks I think a kid wants out of a simple film. It's action-packed, you understand what's going on, and for the most part, I mean, the oil stuff may be a little more difficult for a kid to comprehend. But, again, like I said, there's still a appeal to this film in its easy storytelling and in its design as to how it is keeping the concept at the forefront, and that's all a child will need. Ultimately, well, I think it's fine for those reasons alone. Ultimately, by the end of the day, you're going to have to decide for yourself whether or not this is a ride worth taking.